Sometimes selection can be really painful when you need to do a complex selection but you're using the wrong tool. So that's why I have this masterclass video for you guys, so you can actually learn a lot of selection tools and then you can use it in your project to save a lot of time. So we will first go for some basic selection tools, then some intermediate, then advanced, and then at the end we will go for some tips and tricks that can be really useful. So it's going to be so interesting, and now let's get started. Hello. So we are here at the Blender screen and we are ready to start. Let me show you the format really quick. We are first going to learn some basic tools and some basic navigations. After that, we would go for some more tools that might be new for you. And after that, we will go for the really advanced tools that are pretty rare and a lot of people don't know it. And after that, at the end, we will go for some tips and tricks, and then we will know that how useful it can be and how it can save a lot of time. So let's get started. So we are at the Blender screens. I turn on the cast keys so you can see all the keys that I press here. And okay, so as we know that with left click we can actually select anything that we want. So this is really basic. Same things can be selected from here. At this scene, at the outliner, we have everything that are in the scene here, so I can just left click and select that. So with left click and drag I can just do the box select, so that's another thing. Some more thing that can be related to the selection is that sometime you need a selection and work on that, so you can just solo that thing. So that's the solo selection thing. So with slash we can do that, and we can actually hide some selections. Okay, with box select, and we want to add another thing, we can just keep pressing the shift and left click and do that. Same we can go for like one click shift and another click shift and another click. So that's that thing. And with A we can actually select all. With alt tab we can deselect all. So that's another thing. That's really basic thing that we already know, so there is nothing pretty new in it. So okay, now we would go for some more tools. So let me first show you some tools here. So now we are at the box selection. It means that if we drag, it will come up this box and anything under the box will select here. If you want to do the inverse of it, so I can hold control key and then drag, so anything now comes inside this box won't be selected and it will be deselected like that. So it's that thing. And now if we come up here we can actually change this one. There is another one that is called circle tool. So the circle tool is actually anything that comes under the circle will keep getting selected like this. And if I just want to deselect, I can just click anything around here and I will deselect that. To grow this circle you would need the plus key and the minus from the numpad, and also from the numerical keys, so it work with both. So I can just grow my circle and now anything under this circle would be selected like this. Okay, so that's the circle and it keep getting like this and nothing's works. And this is because we need to first escape to actually get out from the circle mode, and then we can come up here again and we can do the box selection. So that was it for the circle one. It's not really useful in object mode because there might be less chance that we want to select things that are under the circle in object mode, but that can be really helpful if we want to do it in the edit mode. Of course there is a lot of stuff that sometimes we want a circle selection, and yeah, this can be really useful. We will be going in that also, but for now I'm just in the object mode and I'm trying to show you the things that can be done here. So okay, another thing is this is also called active selection. So as you can see, one of the selections get active, so this is really useful. For example, I want to select these and the camera is selecting actively. You can see from the color, this color is more yellowish and this one is more reddish. So the yellow one is, it means the active one, So what does it means that if we have any object that is active selected, it means that we would be seeing the properties of that object only. So now if I just press shift and left click and then I see, so now we are seeing the properties of this one. So this is why it happens, because we have this active selection thing. Okay, coming up here, holding the left key and coming up here we have a lasso tool. So again, sometimes we don't need a box to select things and we don't need a circle to select things. We want some free shape selection. So this is why we have the lasso tools, and it works like this. If I just press left click and hold, it will create a circle like this. Not a circle, but it will draw, and anything that comes under the draw will be selected. And the interesting thing is that if I just do the selection and now I want to deselect, I can just do like this. And yeah, this is so fun. We don't actually use this tool. I personally don't, but it is useful and it can save a lot of time. Believe me, sometimes we really need this kind of selection. So it's like selecting the camera and like this. Again, it's the full power you will see in edit mode once I do some complex selection and once the mesh is a bit high poly. So you will see that how powerful it is. But for now, this is why I just want to see that. And another thing, that if I just get selected like this, I can hold control and I can deselect the things, the same process. So it's the same things for all the selections. Whenever I press control, I will be deselecting that. So these were the three main selecting things, that circle, box and lasso. So we are actually going to do that. This was the really basic and navigation thing, the really basic tools that Blender provide. Now we will go a bit in advance. Okay, so another thing that is really important, and that is the collection thing. So we can actually select things based upon the collection. So let me just shift D, shift D, shift D and have a few things, and also add a spare, and now shift D, shift D, shift D like this. And what I'm going to do now is to basically select the things and move this one M, and I would save it in another collections. So new collection, and this would, I would call it boxes, and let's this one, and I would calls like this. Okay, so now what we did is that we divided the things in collections. So now what I can do is that, as you can see here, I can see it, these are the boxes. I can expand or minimize it. So now if I want to select only the things that are boxes, so I can just right click and select objects, and this will automatically do that. Same, I can go for the ball, so right click on the collection and select objects. So yeah, this can make things pretty easy. It can make our project more organized. So I always suggest that always have collections based upon the things that you are creating. So for example, you have a huge architect and there are doors in it. Okay, so maybe I need to put all the doors in one collection, and then I can just select that and maybe want to replace or anything like that. So yeah, it can work like this. Okay, so now we would start going to the edit mode and do some steps here. So let's first right click and subdivide that a few times so we have more area to play with it. And first thing is that we have three selections here. One is vertex, which are the corners. One is the edges, which are the edges, and one are the faces, which are actually faces like this. And again, I can use the same tools that I showed. So let's first come up here to the box selection. So it's the box, and this is the circle. So again, now you can see that how useful the circle one is. If I just keep my Okay, so I can change my radius from here. If I just do that, as you can see now, it's seems to be more useful than that, because in object mode we actually don't need that kind of thing. So yeah, this is how it's a bit more useful, that we can do a circle selection like that. And same goes for the lasso tool, that we can select things freely like this, and I can create the shapes that I want. Okay, so if I now want one circle here, one here, like this, I can do this. That's pretty useful. Okay, so now we would go for some more selection tools. So for example, I want to select the whole loop. So I would press Alt and Shift and left click to actually select that. And it's basically Alt and left click, but if I keep pressing the Shift, I can actually add more edges, more loops that I want. And if I keep pressing Control, if I want to deselect that, I can Alt Shift and again click on the same loop, so I can deselect that. Okay, so that's thing. If I want to do a ring, sometime we want to select the ring. So for example, I want to select this ring, I can press Alt, Control and left click, and I can do this ring. So maybe I need to collapse this one and something like this, maybe whatever that I want. But this is how I can actually select a ring. And again, if I want to add more rings, I would press Alt, Control, Shift, and let's add like that. And now let's collapse this one, and yeah. So this is how to select these both. That's pretty useful. Another tip here, a quick tip here, that if I need the ring tool again and again, so what I can do is that, for example, I select this ring and now I want to actually select the loops based on it. So what I can do is come up here and select loops and select loop. Now I select the loops based upon the rings that I created. That can be more useful, I think. But we will talk about that in more advanced later. So this was just a quick tip here. And now let's continue. Okay, now let's talk about the inverse selection. For example, I want to just not, okay, I select these and now I need to inverse of it. So I can just press Ctrl I and I will get inverse of it. So instead of selecting the whole thing and then just deselecting that, it's more better to just select the area that you don't want to select and then Ctrl I and keep taking inverse of it. So yeah, the inverse can be really useful in a lot of ways, like that. Okay, another thing that we might need is the grow selection. So for example, I need 4 loops in the middle. So what I would do is that I have this one, so I selected this one, and now I can press Ctrl plus plus plus. So this will now grow my selection like this. I can Control and minus of the numpad, and I can like add or remove the things that I needed, something like that. Okay, so again, if I just wanted, I can do this and then I can Control I and have this kind of selection. So I think that's pretty interesting, and yeah, this can save a lot of time. Control I, and yeah, we got it. Again, if I want to deselect a fuse, and now I need inverse of it, so I can just take an inverse of it. That's how you can play with it. Okay, another thing that's more useful is that we can actually save selection. So this is the question that a lot of people ask from me, that can we save selection in Blender? Yes, we can. So for example, I have this selection and I come up here and add a vertex group. So based on the vertex group, I can actually select the things later. So I added this group and let's me call it loops. Okay, let's call it important loops. For example, I need this letter too. So one thing is that later on I select the whole thing again, so that's more time taking. But if I save the selection for later, I can just use it whenever I need it. So I added this group and now I will assign this. So anything that I selected will be assigned to this group. So now whenever I go again, I don't need to reselect these things and do the whole process again. I can just go to my group and click on select, and this will select automatically like that. So we can save different selection. For example, I add another group and I need this selection, so I would assign this one, and now I can just click on select and I can do that. I can select and I can do that. For example, you want to add or remove anything. So for example, I have this selection and I want to deselect these twos. So I would press these threes and click on remove. So now if I select this one, as you can see, it removed these faces that I removed. So this is how I can actually add more. So for example, I add this one and assign this one again. So now whenever I do it, it will update that. So this can useful. Same things goes for the materials. So for example, my object have this white material and another one is the green one. And if I take any selection like this and I assign this color, so now based on the materials I can actually select it, and I can again take an inverse of it if I need it. So or if I want to select the white faces, so I can just click on the white material and then select. So I can save selections according to my materials and according to the vertex group that I have. Okay, another selection tool is the loose parts. So for example, we have one object but we have actually two meshes in it like this, and even if they are collapsed, it doesn't matter. But what we can do is that we can actually select this island or this loose part which are not connected to the another mesh, but it's one object. I can press L to just select that. But if there are a few vertex that are merged, for example, I select these two and I merge it in center, now it's one object, it's one mesh. So now if I press L, I won't be able to do that. So it only work when the vertex are not connected to each other. So this is how I can quickly select things based upon the loose parts. And again I can take inverse. Okay, so if I want to deselect in this thing, I can shift and L and I can deselect that one. And if I want to add anything, I can shift and L. I can L and add this, but with shift L I can just remove that thing. So yeah, that was it for this thing, and now let's get some more tools. Okay, so another thing is checker deselect. It's pretty interesting that, for example, we have this ring, and what I want here is that select one edge and then leave one, then select one. So what I can do here is that I can select it and now press F3 and search for checker deselect, or it comes up here at the main screen. But if you don't get this, you can just type checker deselect and you will get this thing. And now what it do is that it actually select one and leave one. But the interesting thing is that we get the full menu here, and I can increase the number of deselected. So now it leave 2 and select 1, or I can increase the number of selection, so it will now select 2 and leave 1. And I can change the offset. So for example, I want these two to be selected and this one to be not, so I can just change the offset and this will switch to that. So This is really brilliant thing, I think. And based upon this, what I can do is that now I can select the loops again, edge loops, and I can dissolve it or anything that I want it. So how quickly it is to actually low poly a mesh. So for example, I want to, there are a lot of vertex, and now I select a ring, F3, checker deselect. So I get 3 loops selected and 1 deselected based upon the data I put. Now I select actually the loops according to it, and I can just remove that. So this is really brilliant, and it's definitely save a lot of time. Okay, another thing that is really famous, I actually personally didn't find it useful. Maybe I don't do these kind of projects because I work in a game industry, and we actually don't use it because I create characters and for that we don't need it. But tell me in comments if you think that it's really useful and when you use it, so you can just give a comments. So the thing is that we can actually select random. So if I have this kind of mesh and I want some random selection, I can click on select and then select random, and this will do a kind of like random pattern. Really don't know how it can be useful, but I actually see in a lot of people using it, this one. So yeah, if you think it's useful, so you can just use this one. It's a tool that exists in Blender, and I think it can be handy in a lot of things. Maybe sometime you need some random things to change. It can be like this, maybe that I get this, I extrude this one, now I come up here and make this one individual and just scale that. Maybe I get some really random things and maybe it's useful. Okay, another tool is the mirror tool. So if I now select this ear like this, and what I want is that the mirror of this one, so I can come up here to select and then select mirror, or there is a shortcut that Blender gives, Shift Control M. So I can press that or come up here and click on this one, and now it actually deselect this one and select the mirror of it. But and also it comes, this menu comes and you can tell the Blender that in which direction that you need it. So for now it's the X direction, of course, so it's perfectly fine. But if your object is mirror in the Y and Z thing, so you can just do that. And the interesting thing is that it have the extend key. So if I click on this one, it will actually now select both, and I can move it anywhere that I want or anything I want to do with it. So it's called the mirror one. So if I just do this one, I can Control Shift and M, have a mirror of it, and if I turn on the extend tool, I can just select both sides. So yeah, this can be really useful. For me it is useful. Sometimes I create character and I want to mark seams, so I just do one side and then I press Control Shift M, another side, and I Control E and mark a seam. So yeah, it can useful in that way. So attached to this thing, that sometime like I forgot to do the mirror, I just mark seam and now I deselect that. Sometime like for now it's really simple loop, but sometimes it's the really complex loop that you selected, and then it's a bit time taking to do the selection again. So what I can do is that I can actually select this with the seam. So if it have the seam, I can just simply click on this one and Shift G, and now come up here and select the seam. So now it will select everything that have seam, and now I select this one. So now what I can do is that Control Shift M, and I can get this side and I can just mark seam it. So this is how I can do that. So it's a bit trick to actually first select the seams and then take the mirror of that thing. Same things can go for the creases that we get. So for some time we have an object that have a subdivision thing like this, and we actually crease some of them. Like we have this one, and we press N, come up here to the items actually, and turn on the mean crease. It gives actually a sharp thing like this. So as you can see, the before and after, it gives a pretty sharp edge like this. Now I can actually select things based upon the seams. Sometimes I need the seams to select again, and again Shift G, and then I would go for creases. And same I go for the sharp things, that sometimes we right click and mark sharp, okay, like this. And now I need to select this sharp, so I can press Shift G, select this one first, Shift G, and press the sharpness. And now I can clear the sharp or whatever I needed, so I can do that. Okay, another interesting thing here is that I can do a selection based upon the length of the edges that I have. So for example, I have this edge and it have an X amount of edge length, and if I press Shift G, I can click on length, and this will now select every edge that have the same length. So it's really useful. And for example, this have the same length, and if I just scale this one a bit like this, and now I press Shift G and length, now it won't select it. So it need exactly the same length that it have. So sometimes we have a model and that have some kind of loops that have the similar length, it will now do that. And if I need the sometime it don't detect it because there is a little difference in that, I can increase the threshold. So if I just do that, as you can see, it start adding some more loops that have similar length. So it's also can be useful. Also you can see that here it compares it to equal, but you can say like less length, like these edges that have shorter edges length than this one, or you can do the greater one. So it will now only select the edges that have greater length than the one that we selected. So yeah, this is really useful, and I know it saves a lot of time if we know these tools. Okay, so another cool selection tool can be that if we select any of the faces and now we start creating a pattern, so I can just do this, and now I can come up here to the select and select more or less, and then click on next active, and now it will select this pattern. Now if we repeat this thing with Shift R, I can actually select it like this. Now I need another pattern, so I would click like this. Now go to the select, next, and now Shift R and do that. So this is how I can detect a pattern and I can repeat the selection of that pattern. So okay, another thing it can be is that we have this kind of surface that is all round, but some of the faces are flat. And now if I want, I can take a selection of this one. So I can select any of them and then Shift G and then click on coplanar, and this will now automatically select the faces that are flat like this. It can be like this, and it can work like this, but it need the surface that is flatter like this and that is plane like this. So Shift G and coplanar, and yeah, this will detect that. If I keep anything like this, now it won't do that. So as you can see, now it only select that. So it work with the flat surface, and this can be useful. Okay, another thing is that sometimes we select a few faces and then we shade smooth it, and the whole object is not smooth but only the few faces. So now I can do a selection on this one, so I can just press Shift G and then flat or smooth, and this will now automatically do that. Now these places are not smooth and these are flat. So now if I select any of them and then Shift G and then click on that, so it will now only select the faces that are flat. So okay, so we have all chords around, but as you can see, a few of the places have 5 vertex too. And now if I want to actually select all the faces that have 5 vertex and I want to remove it or anything that I want, so what I can do is I can select this one and shift G, and then we can click on polygon sides. Now here we get a few options that we need equal of this one. So yeah, exactly, we need equal of this one, but sometime we need greater than this one, and sometime we need lesser than this one. So this is how it can be useful. Let me show you. For example, it have all quads, so I need all the faces that are not quad. So I would select the quad and then shift G and then click on polygon sides, and now I would say select all the faces that have more vertex than quad, which are 4. So if I do the greater one, so as you can see, it select all the faces that have more faces. So now I can shift H to just select these, and I can work on that, or maybe I need to fix this thing or anything that I needed, or sometime there are tries in this one. As you can see, if I create these tries, and now I need all quads, so what I will do is shift G polygons and then lesser than quads, and these are the 2 triangles that are lesser than that, and I can just now work on that. So this really helps if you want to model a character, and because in the character we don't need triangles or anything that's are more or less than quads, so we need these tools to actually detect the tries and detect the n-gons or anything that's out of this thing. So it's really useful in that. Okay, another cool thing is that we have a pattern selection too. So for example, I have this box called cube, and I have a duplicates of these, and I have a spare and duplicate of these. So now the thing is that what if I want to select all the boxes that exist in this scene, or maybe they're a mix of them, so it's sometimes a bit hard to do that. So I can't do it, and I need to do it manually like this. So what I can do is that I can select the cube and then click on select, and then click on select patterns. Now it gives the stars. Okay, and now if I just type before the star, I type cube and I click on OK. So now it select the cube, and the stars means that anything that have the name of cube but have some extra naming on that, so it will also select that, because we have like cube 001, cube 002 like this. But sometimes if I just rename this one here, anything like that, or and press dot, now it won't select it in this way. So if I need to select that also, what I need to do is that add a star in the starting. So I would add a star and then do that. Now it will also select this one. So now this is really useful. So I get all the selections of that. Now I can select spare, select patterns, and then I will tell select the spare and click. I think I named the spare wrong, that's why I don't detect it. Of course I did. And like that, and it automatically select the whole thing. This is really interesting, and yeah, it saves a lot of time. Okay, the last tool that we are going to learn is that sometime I take a selection like Control, Shift and left click like this, like this, like this, or anything really complex. Now what I want here is that I want to select the things that are inside this one. So I can click on select. So come up here to the select and click on select loops, and then come up here. So here we have an option for select loops in a region, and now it will select all the things that are in a region. And sometimes I want the inverse of it, that I want just the edges of this one. So I can click on select and then come up here and then do that select boundaries loops, and now it will select only the boundaries. So these all tools are useful to me and it save a lot of time for me. You can tell in comments that which tool is really important to you, which was new to you today, and how you're going to use that and how it more time saving. And if you know any more tool than this one, just put a comment so people can get an idea from this one and we all can learn together. So thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video. For now, bye.